Welcome children. Today we continue with the fourth chapter of civics for standard 9th, electoral politics, and this is the second part and concluding part of the lesson. Now the next topic, voters list. Once the constituencies are decided, the next step is to decide who can vote and who cannot vote. Now, the list of those who are eligible to vote is prepared much before the election and given to everyone, which is officially called as electoral roll, and it is commonly known as voters list. And it is the responsibility of the government to get the names of all the eligible voters put on the voters list. Now, the first condition of a democratic election is that everyone should get an equal opportunity to choose their representatives. And earlier we had learned about universal adult franchise. Now, what is universal? That is, all citizens, adult in our country who are 18 and above, have the right to vote, irrespective of their caste, religion, gender, or economic status. They all deserve to have an equal share in electing their representatives. Few people in our country can't vote. They are criminals and people who are of unsound mind. Now, it is the responsibility of the government to update the voters list, and this is done after every 5 years before the elections. And you see, every year certain percentage of our youth attain the age of 18, so their names must be added to the voters list. And if a person dies, his name must be removed from the voters list. Now, there are times when a voter moves from one constituency to another, so the government must remove his name from the previous constituency and add it to the new constituency's voters list. In the last few years, a new system called Election Photo Identity Card, commonly known as EPIC, was introduced, and the government has tried to give this card to every person on the voters list. And this card has his photograph of the voter, his birth age, the name of his father, address, all the details are written in this card. And the person has to carry this card when he goes out to vote. It is required, it is compulsory for him to carry this card when he goes out to vote, so that no one can vote for someone else. But the card is not yet compulsory for voting, as voters can show many other proofs of identity like the ration card or the driving license. Moving ahead, nomination of candidates. Now, in a democratic election, people have a real choice. This happens only when there are almost no restrictions on anyone to contest an election, and this is what our system provides. Anyone who can be a voter can also become a candidate in elections. The only difference is that in order to be a candidate, the minimum age that is required is 25 years, while you require only 18 years for being a voter. Any voter can contest an elections independently or join a party. The party can nominate him by giving him a ticket, and once he joins that party, the political parties, then he gets the party symbol and the support from the party. Now, any person who wishes to contest an election has to fill a nomination form and give some money as security deposit. Now, recently a new system of declaration has been introduced by the Supreme Court. Each candidate who wants to contest the elections must disclose his educational qualifications, his assets and property, and if there are any criminal cases, pending against him. And after the information is received, this is made public, it's open, and then it gives an opportunity to the voters to decide on the basis of the information given by the candidates whether they should vote for him or not. Now, moving ahead, election campaigns. Now, the main purpose of election is to give people a chance to choose their representatives, the government, and the policies they prefer. Therefore, it is necessary to have a free and open discussion about who is a better representative, which party will make a better government, or what is a good policy. This is what happens during an election campaign. Each party puts forward its views either through rallies, public meetings, interviews, and advertisements, telling the people what kind of a government they are going to form and what are the commitments they are going to do once they come to power. So this helps the people to decide and vote for whichever party they think will form a better government. Now, the Election Commission, which is an independent body which conducts free and fair elections in our country, gives 2 weeks time for all the political parties for campaigning. And it is during these 2 weeks that the political leaders start contacting their voters, they organize meetings, rallies, they also have advertisements in papers and give interviews on television, okay, telling about what kind of a government they will be giving to the people once they are elected and voted to power. But this parties are not limited only to 2 weeks only. They start preparing for elections months before they actually take place. Now, in election campaigns, political parties try to focus public attention on some big issues, and they want to attract the public to that issue and get them to vote for their party on that basis. And so they give certain slogans. Let us see some of the slogans that are given by various political parties in various elections. Now, the Congress party led by Indira Gandhi gave the slogan of Garibi Hatao, remove poverty, in the Lok Sabha elections of 1971. The party promised to reorient all the policies of the government to remove poverty from the country. Next was Save Democracy, was a slogan given by Janata Party under the leadership of Jai Prakash Narayan in the Lok Sabha elections held in 1977. The party promised to undo all the excesses committed during emergency and restore civil liberties. The third, we see the Left Front used the slogan of land to the tiller in the West Bengal Assembly elections held in 1977. And protect the self-respect of the Telugus was the slogan used by N.T. Rama Rao, the leader of the Telugu Desam party in Andhra Pradesh Assembly elections in 1983. So in a democracy, it is best to leave political parties and candidates free to conduct their elections the way they want to. But it is sometimes necessary to regulate campaigns to ensure that every political party and candidate gets a fair and equal chance to compete. So let us see what can a political parties or candidates not do during an election campaign. Now children, according to our election law, no party or candidate can first bribe or threaten voters or appeal to them in the name of caste or religion, nor they can use government resources for election campaigns, and can spend only more than 25 lakhs in a constituency for a Lok Sabha elections when it is for the center, and 10 lakhs in a constituency for an assembly elections. And if they do so, their elections can be rejected by the court even after they have been declared elected. In addition to these laws, there are other, all political parties in the country have agreed to a moral code of conduct for election campaigns. And according to that, no party or candidate can use any place of worship for election propaganda, nor can they use government vehicles, aircraft and officials for elections. And once election dates are announced, Minister shall not lay foundation stones of any projects, take any big policy decision, or make any promises of providing public facilities. Polling and counting of votes. Now, children, the final stage of an election is the day when the voters cast or poll their vote. That day is usually called the election day or the voting day. Now, every person whose name is on the voters list can go to a nearby polling booth situated usually in a local school or a government offices. Now, what is a polling booth? It is a place where the people go and cast their vote. Now, once the voter goes inside the booth, the election official identifies him or her, okay, checks up with the voters list if it is the same person or not. So, identification is done. Now, after the identification process, the election officials put a mark on the finger and allow the voter to cast his or her vote. And an agent of each candidate is allowed to sit inside the polling booth to ensure that the voting takes place in a fair and free manner. Now, earlier the voters used to cast their vote using putting a stamp on the ballot paper. Now, a ballot paper was a sheet of paper in which the names of the contesting candidate along with their party names and symbols were listed. Okay, but there was a problem in this. Now, the problem in using the ballot paper was that the voters had to put a stamp, and sometimes you can see the stamp was put in the center. We didn't know which party did he vote for, or sometimes he put it in most of the places. So those votes had to be cancelled and be declared as null and void. Nowadays, electronic voting machines (EVMs) are used to record votes. The machine shows the names of the candidates and the party symbols. Independent candidates too have their own symbols allotted by Election Commission. And all that the voter has to do is to press the button against the name of the candidate he or she wants to give his or her vote. Now, once the polling is over, voting is over, all the EVMs are sealed and taken to a secure, safe place. After a few days later, on a fixed day, all the EVMs from a constituencies are opened and the votes secured by each candidate are counted. The agents of all the candidates are also present on this day to ensure that the counting is done properly. Now, the candidate who secures the highest number of votes from a constituency is declared elected. And in a general election, usually the counting of votes in all the constituencies take place at the same time on the same day. Television channels, radios, and newspapers report this event. Within a few hours of counting, all the results are declared and it becomes clear as to who will form the next government. So once the results are out, the party which has secured the maximum votes starts to celebrate. Now, what makes election in India democratic? Actually, we read a lot about unfair practices that are carried out during elections. The newspapers, the televisions report many such allegations on how the elections were conducted, like inclusions of false names in the voters list, misuse of government facilities by officials of the ruling party, excessive use of money by rich candidates and big parties, and rigging and booth capturing of the polling booths on the voting day. So many of these reports are correct, but not all. Okay, and we see that still, although there are reports of such electoral malpractices, but still we find that elections in India are conducted in a democratic way. One simple way of checking whether elections are fair or not is to look at who conducts the elections. Are they independent of the government? Yes, in our country, elections are conducted by an independent and a very powerful election Commission (EC), it enjoys the same kind of independence that the judiciary enjoys. The Chief Election Commissioner is appointed by the President of India. But once appointed, the Chief Election Commissioner is not answerable to the President or the government. Even if the ruling party or the government does not like what the Commission says, it is virtually impossible for it to remove the election commissioner. Now children, there are very few election commissions in the world that has such wide ranging powers as the Election Commission of India. Now let's see what are the powers. The Election Commission takes decision on every aspect of conduct and control of elections, right from the announcement date of the elections to the declaration of the results of the elections. It implements the code of conduct and punishes any candidate or party that violates it. Third, we see during the election period, the Election Commission can order the government to follow some guidelines to prevent use and misuse of government power to enhance its chances to win elections or to transfer some government officials. Fourth, we see when on election duty, government officers work under the control of the Election Commission and not the government. And in the last 25 years, we have seen the Election Commission has begun to exercise all its powers and even expand it. It is very common now for the Election Commission to reprimand the government and administration for their lapses. When election officials come to the opinion that the polling was not fair in some booths or even an entire constituency, they can order a re-poll. The ruling party often do not like what the Election Commission does, but they have to obey. This would not have happened if the Election Commission was not independent and powerful. Now children, another way to check the quality of the election process is to see whether people participate in the voting with enthusiasm. So popular participation is also very important. So if the election process is not free or fair, the people will not continue to participate in this exercise. So you can see people's participation in election is usually measured by voter turnout figures, and you can see the turnout indicates the percentage of eligible voters who actually cast their votes. And we have seen over the years the percentage of voting in India has been increasing. Now, over the last 50 years, the turnouts in Europe and North America has declined, and in India, we see the turnout has either remained stable or actually gone up. In India, the poor, the illiterate and underprivileged people vote in large proportion as compared to the rich and privileged sections. This is in high in contrast to the Western democracies. For example, in United States of America, poor people, African Americans, and vote much less than the rich and the white people. Now, common people in India attach a lot of importance to elections. They feel that through elections they can bring pressure on the political parties to adopt policies and programs favorable for them. They also feel that their vote matters in the way things are run in the country. And of late we are seeing more people are going out to vote. The percentage of voting has increased. Now, one final test of the free and fair elections is the acceptance of election outcome. If elections are not free or fair, the outcome always favors the powerful. In such a situation, the ruling parties do not lose elections. Usually, the losing party does not accept the outcome of a rigged election. Now, the outcome of India's election speaks for itself. The ruling parties routinely lose elections in India, both at the national and state level. In fact, in every 2 out of the 3 elections held in the past 25 years, the ruling party has lost. Okay? And the candidates who have known to have spent a lot of money on buying votes and those with known criminal connections often lose elections. Okay, and barring a few disputed elections, the electoral outcomes are usually accepted as people's verdict by the defeated party. Now, challenges to a free and fair elections. Now, all this leads to a simple conclusion that elections in India are basically free and fair. The party that wins an elections and forms the governments does so because people have chosen it over its rivals. This may not be true for every constituency. A few candidates may win purely on the basis of money, power, and unfair means. But the overall verdict of a general election still reflects a popular preference. Now, as we say, the elections in our country are pretty free and fair, but nothing is 100% perfect. Some shortcomings remain. Similarly, there are some shortcomings in our elections as well. Now let us see some of the shortcomings. First is the candidates and the parties with a lot of money may not be sure of their victory, but they do enjoy a big and unfair advantage over smaller parties and independent candidates. Second is in some parts of the country, candidates with criminal connections have been able to push others out of the electoral race and to secure a ticket from major parties. Third, we see some families tend to dominate political parties. Tickets are distributed to the relatives from these families. And fourth, we see very often elections offer little choice to ordinary citizens, for both the major party are quite similar to each other, both in policies and practices. And lastly, we see smaller parties and independent candidates suffer a huge disadvantage compared to bigger parties. Now, these challenges exist not just in India but also in many established democracies. These deeper issues are a matter of concern for those who believe in democracy. That is why citizens, social activists, and organizations have been demanding reforms in our electoral system. Can you think of some reforms? What can an ordinary citizen do to face these challenges? Think about it. Children, with this we conclude the chapter. Do wait for my next video. Please till then do view and subscribe. Thank you.